Okay, good afternoon. So what was the discussion about? Public service values. Fine, so we are talking about public service values. Okay, audible? Okay, good afternoon, Jyoti. So public services values, we were discussing about what is a value. Fine, so how do you define value? But what is a value? Right, okay, write one question. This is a UPSC question. Right. Like, what role do societal institutions like media, religion, and government play in transmitting cultural values and shaping why? What role do societal institutions like media, religion, and government play in transmitting cultural values and shaping ethical behavior in communities? How does it impact civil services? Top. Fine. क्या लिखेंगे वही बताओ. What do we write?
Different communities and cultures.
So how do you write an answer? Don't explain the question. How to write the answer? वो तो हम सबको पता है क्या है क्वेश्चन का मतलब. Tell me the answer. How will you start?
I will try to find out कि core values क्या हैं और उनको एक intrinsic value के अंदर डाल के and
How do you write an answer?
I will start with introduction of
Fine. So when you have to write an answer, first thing, you think of the dots. Then you have to match the dots. क्या dots हो गए भाई? तैयारी कर रहे हो तब से. पहले क्या सोचोगे, सोचना शुरू करो। इतनी मेहनत करके जो पढ़ाया जाता है, आखिरी में जाके तुम जो है, तुम नहीं मतलब तुम जैसे बच्चे, सर ये नहीं किया हमने, वो नहीं किया है? तो why to develop so much of brain for you? If you cannot have independent thinking, there is no utility of all this teaching. तो इससे बेटर तो हम पहले ही थे कमर्शियल सिस्टम। इतनी मेहनत क्या है पढ़ाने का, क्या फायदा? बताओ कैसे, हाउ विल यू थिंक इफ यू डोंट राइट? इट इज यूजलेस। फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन क्या है? दीज इंस्टीट्यूशंस, दीज आर जस्ट द cues, right? These are just additional ideas. What is the question? This is the question and this is the question. ठीक है, ये सिर्फ कॉन्टेक्स्ट है। तो पहले तो ये लिखना है ना, ये नहीं लिखना है पहले। फाइन, it's not about just putting anything in the as per the given vocabulary. If you write anything, it doesn't make sense. So what is the idea? That we have to talk about how values and behaviors are shaped, right, with the particular context. Fine. So सबसे important क्या है? You'll start with this. This will be your basic intro. Yeah, this is called the pre-introduction. नहीं, क्योंकि इंट्रो क्वेश्चन ही वैल्यूज और बिहेवियर के बारे में, तो सिविल सर्विसेज तो सिर्फ उसका एक कॉन्सिक्वेंस है। दिस कम्स आफ्टर दिस ओनली, नो? मेन एजेंडा क्या है? If you have to describe yourself, you'll talk about your feet, your legs, your hand, your finger, or you'll talk about yourself as a character, as a personality. Fine. तो core क्या है इस क्वेश्चन का? This is the core. Core तो वही है ना भाई, how values are transmitted. That's the core of the question. The same values get into civil services, into people, into whatever you want. तो पहले तो core तो एड्रेस करना पड़ेगा। So we could write one of the schemes that government intends to. Yeah, I'm simply, you can write what you can write your own analysis of the world. It doesn't matter to me, but I'll not give marks for that. I'm asking how do you start, right? Correct. How values are पहले लिखो। पहले सबसे important क्या है? Pre-introduction. Introduction क्या है? Introduction is the main part of the question. Pre-introduction is what? How you lead that introduction. So what will you write? First thing is obviously you have to talk about values, right? Ethical or ethical behavior. What does values and ethical behavior constitute? पहले तो ये लिखोगे। So what values or ethical behavior constitute? Fine. What does it constitute? So write what is a value? Definition of value. Value or values are a preference or expression of choices that guides human actions. So what is the value? Reference है ना भाई value. It's an expression of choice. Okay, which guides the human? लिखो, right? कोई आके लिखवाएगा नहीं। यूज करो, इतनी मेहनत की है, 6 महीने भौंकता हूँ, फायदा क्या है? If you don't come up to that level, then you're as good as anybody walking on the road for me. We are not an institution that give too much of value to students, right? Unless they follow the ability that we want to inculcate. I don't care. तुमसे मेरा घर नहीं चलना है। घर चलाने के लिए मेरे पास बहुत सारे रास्ते हैं। ये उनके लिए प्रॉब्लम होगी जिनको इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं आता है, और ये भी ठीक से नहीं आता है। For them, that kind of hawabazi is good. If you don't inculcate the real logic, what is the use of all this discussion and analysis? Right? You are going back and everything is sublimed, evaporated. Kya fayda? Go back, work on it, what we have discussed, sit for half an hour. Whatever we discuss, whatever we study, go back, sit for half an hour, 40 minutes, again think about it. उसको एक शेप दो. फाइन, खुद के लिए मेहनत नहीं करोगे तो तुम्हारे लिए कोई नहीं कर सकता. That's a fact. You cannot make a career if you're not having that willpower yourself. Fine. So, आपको कोई we can take you to the well. You cannot force you to drink. So we are taking you to the ocean. You are not able to use that also. Then what is the utility? Fine. इतनी analysis, इतना समझाना, इतना debate, discussion. Why we are doing all that? So that you understand. You put that into writing. इसलिए when we are discussing, दिमाग का use करो, पेन का कम करो, but दिमाग का use करो. बिना उसके बेकार है सब. फाइन, कितने साल पढ़ते रहो, क्या फायदा? लक हो गया तो निकल जाओगे. So always start with the most fundamental thing that has been asked in the question. It's not civil services, it's not context, it is the value system. पूरा क्वेश्चन बिना उस वैल्यू के यूजलेस है क्या उस क्वेश्चन में? See, so when you start, values are preference or expression of choices that guides human action. Now you start this way, right? And then now you tend to classify or define it. The values have an impact on the actions and the intent on which the actions have been taken. Now from here you can take the idea that yes, in this context, it would be pertinent to use Gandhi's concept of or anything that Gandhi basic idea. Gandhi's concept of correct, or anything you want to say something else. Anything else? Sarvodaya, okay, right, or kuch Gandhi core philosophy के 3 बंदर नहीं याद है? 3 monkeys. In this context, it would be pertinent to use Gandhi's concept of ethical idealism, that is right thought, action, content, whatever. Or or Kant's universal moral imperatives. Things have inherent value as good or bad. Right? Now what we have done, we have provided basic understanding, then we've used some scholar, right? And now we'll take the idea. So in essence, values shape the world around us. Now we had to come to this idea that whatever values we carry, whatever values we imbibe, that will shape the world around us, right? There are mainly two types of values: intrinsic and extrinsic. Now you can write with these intrinsic and extrinsic values, they are shaped by socialization. Socialization, right? Then what is socialization? You can write it in more interesting manner also. Socialization. So then you can write, okay. See, learning is an art and writing is a greater art. It's not science. That is why the more you think, the more you visualize things, the better you can write. Don't get stuck into information and facts, क्योंकि उससे कोई sense नहीं create होगा. Right? Learning goes beyond that. So don't look at a content mixed, fixed in a particular unit of a particular topic, right? Content is content. That's the idea. It goes throughout the content. 1+2 पता है तो कहीं भी यूज होगा 1+2 ना. अब ये थोड़ा कि 1+2 नंबर सिस्टम में ही आएगा और इंटीग्रेशन में नहीं आएगा, probability में नहीं यूज होगा. What is this? That's the core concept. Once you have learned the core concept, you keep applying it, right? What is socialization now? Socialization is learning, right? Or development of your cognitive ability, right? Emergence of your perspectives. How we make sense of these things that are happening around us. So how are we able to incorporate the knowledge around us? That is socialization. Now you can write कि by socialization, make it interesting. Don't write like a stupid news item. Fine. Socialization कैसा हो सकता है? Primary and second. Now you write primary socialization, major leaf family. your ideology, your knowledge, right? You see? Now this gives already idea कि how do they shape? So how do they shape? The primary and the secondary socialization, they come in association with each other. See? So how you transform starting from the personal value system and you move to the social or collective value system, right? From more informal, you move towards more formal value system. Now you write, okay, fine. This is how it shapes. How this shapes, what attributes can be acquired through this. So see, your aesthetics, your food habits, or food or habits, clothing, right, or making perceptions about the day-to-day life, right, or inculcating certain kinds of attributes or habits which are mostly visible in our family, which are imbibed by the elders. ये सब learning हम कहाँ से करते हैं? Fine. This somewhere become intrinsic to us. This is more extrinsic to us. But then it does not exist at two different levels, right? They always come in interaction with each other. So when people make choices, when people act, when people make decisions, right, these both will come into play. And that is how we are shaped. So, for example, you can write international institutions like United Nations created a consciousness regarding human rights. Right? Religion may create a aspect of communalism. The religious bigotry has led to the rise of terrorism. How this has led to something called patriarchy, gender perspective, right? Role of women in society. The same person who loves his mother, respects his mother, discards his wife. How is it possible? Okay? Not you, someone. So, there are people who do not have a understanding of or do not have a sense of stability in terms of values. They use multiple values, right? They pick and choose values as per the convenience. So when we are sitting in or when we are taking decisions related to our personal life, our personal values or primary socialization comes into play. When we are taking values related to public life or professional life, this comes into play, right? Or maybe we are working in some gray zone, shadow zone, then both the values come into play, right? For example, someone gets power and then he misuses power to help his community. What is he doing? He's undermining the universal principles of values of honesty and fairness and whatever, and he's using it for his own benefit. See, so now this is what shapes the politico, social, economic, administrative culture. So culture क्या है? Culture is the amalgamation of values. What else? Culture relates to the practices, the habits, the actions, the expressions that we express or that we do as a consequence of the values that we have imbibed. So when they become stable, when they become in a format, when they become permanent, they become culture. So rituals हैं, modes हैं, habits हैं, वो सब क्या है? They will all lead to this culture. So same, now this culture will be visible, right, at the personal level, which is coming from here, and this will be also visible at the professional level. So when there is extreme politicization, the political values invade the bureaucracy. They impact the civil services, right? When there is extremism in the society in terms of religion, in terms of community, in terms of region, and people who are entering the civil services, they are coming from those areas. Obviously, their personal values will be carried into civil services, right? So both formal civil services can be shaped by formal things like constitution, law, etc. But informal values will be shaped by, again, the negative aspects of the political system, right? Or society, nepotism, favoritism, corruption, tolerance towards corruption, society, lack of accountability, lack of political will, right? Acceptance of money as the success, acceptance of or the society giving value to materialism as success. The society is unaware of the consequences of power. The society is not developed enough to resist the misuse of authority or power. It gives more liberty to the people who are in the system. See? So system works through what? The defined values of the system, right? And the values which are coming from the environment. That is the answer. So neutrality is demanded by the system, right? But favoritism and nepotism are influenced by the ecology, right? So we enter into the idea कि भाई see ecology or context or cultural relativism has a profound impact on the kind of system or civil services system we created. Though there are global influences, but there are a lot of local influences and regional influences that shape administration. So how civil services values are shaped, right? They are shaped by the interplay of various forces, various value systems that are existing at different levels of hierarchy, right? And as civil servants are not somebody from outside the world, they are also belonging to the same society and they have somewhere been influenced by the same culture. Right? Now you summarize it. Though to overcome that, we need certain mechanisms. क्या mechanism? Prevention of Corruption Act, social accountability, participation of people, decentralization of power. ये लिखो पूरा पवेड है. But problem ये है कि वो sense आया हो तब लिखोगे. पढ़ो और निकल लो. नहीं? You use as per your logic, but see, this is the format. If you don't use this format, you will not get marks. As simple as that. So whatever discussions you do, useless. If you cannot apply that in your life or for the purpose for which it has been done, useless. Fine. So this is how you have to write it. Yesterday one girl asked me, Rupanshi, format क्या होना चाहिए? ये format होना चाहिए. Right? Baki, it is up to you. If you have more information, write it. If you have facts and data, use it. How corruption has eroded the values in civil services, how materialism has eroded the values in civil services, right? How lack of political culture or lack of political will has eliminated or downgraded the accountability of the administrative system. As per the recent data of this Oxfam, right? The corruption in India is to the tune of 20,000 crores annually or whatever. Right? Now it is up to you. See. That much of creativity you have to do, no? You are not just kids. कि भाई अभी पालने में से निकल के आ रहे हो. See, your will to succeed will make you find the means, ways and means to work hard. Right? Your will to be dependent will find ways and means to, ask, blame someone कि अच्छा ये नहीं हुआ, ये नहीं हुआ. It's highly illogical, right? Majority of these students, they do not depict the basic character of being a civil servant. They don't have to be collector, but they need to have a basic personality trait of being a civil servant. Just amassing information is not like that. You have to have that courage कि भाई जो मैंने पढ़ा है, जो मैंने समझा है, उसको मैं यूज कैसे करूं और उसके लिए मैं क्या करूं. You have to ask the right question. What should I do? Right? Not what should I know more. First, what should I do with what I know? ये तो important है पहले. यही नहीं पता है कि जो है उससे करना क्या है या वो कितना है. That assessment is zero. See? So it's not a simple process, right? That you come, eat and go and pay the bill. It's a constant endeavor. At least for the time you are doing this. If you're not doing it, leave it. Fine? See. So, public service values जो है या values क्या है वो clear है, right? How values will make or impact your choices, that is clear. How decisions will be impacted and how these decisions will further impact the society. So the more power you have, the more likely you are to impact the society, right? And that is why public service values become necessary to define. Fine, obviously. So if we take second ARC's view, or even let's say we include first ARC as well. See, anybody who says ARC, all the questions in paper 2, except one or two that they have asked from current type. And that is also not current, right? Niti Aayog's 2021 ka question hai wo. Except that. And obviously there is a choice. You can always leave that. Fine? Not every question will be as per your expectation. But most of that, right? Most of that, 90% of that is from the ARC. What you needed was only to understand, orient. Content to basic pointers में भी लिखे जा सकते हैं वही. But the only thing was if you had defined understanding, you could have written. Anyone could have written. But the thing is that whether somebody has thought of looking beyond the book, looking beyond the usual topic, then only they can write. See? So that is why those areas become tough. Why they become tough? Because they require your creativity. If you have to say that CAG is not functioning properly, what will you say? Even government doesn't know what CAG is not functioning properly. How will a student write it? So you have to bring the ideas, no? There is something called ethical audit. 1001 बार हम उसको डिस्कस करते हैं जब हम पढ़ते हैं तो. So there is something called proprietary audit, ethical audit, right? Evaluation of the intention and the actions of the civil servants, right? Not only the acts, but also the basis on which this action was taken. If you have the creativity, you can use. Why not club the RTI type laws, right, with the CAG? Why not create Lokpal, CAG, and other institutions, right? A network of these institutions. Now that is your creativity, because if you have understood the undercurrents, then you can use it. If you have just understood one compartment, you will never be able to understand. Sir, ये तो RTI पे था ही नहीं, मैं RTI कैसे लिखता हूँ? See, that's the stupidity. So where we put a lot of effort, right, ultimately goes in vain, because the students' intellectual understanding does not evolve. If it does not evolve, there is no need for that process. Why to put that much of effort? अगर intellectual ability develop ही नहीं हो पाई, फायदा ही क्या? That means we expect too much from the student. We feel that he is or she is a developed being. That assumption is wrong. Right? We should think कि नहीं ये तो nursery और class 5, 6 के बच्चे इनको ऐसे ही पढ़ाओ. Fine. So जो भी आपने पढ़ा है, that all can be applied. When you write an answer, when you read a question, right, you should be very clear cut कि भाई what can I eliminate from this question without which this question doesn't exist. If you eliminate it from the question will not exist. That is the center part of the question. So if you have to write a question, obviously you will start with what? Whatever is the center of the question. You take its context, you discuss its historical aspect, you write data or facts about it, but theme तो वही होना चाहिए जो है. Everything should now be developed around that theme. Right? तो सिविल सर्विसेज थोड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है कि वैल्यूज कैसे ट्रांसमिट होती हैं. तो वैल्यूज को ट्रांसमिट करने का प्रोसेस बताना है सिविल सर्विसेज का नहीं. राइट? तो अपने पास भी जो भगवान ने दिया है थोड़ा बहुत, राइट, उसका भी इस्तेमाल करो. वापस लेके तो जाओगे नहीं. तो जब तक दुनिया में हो तब तक उसका यूज कर लो. उसके बाद तो वैसे भी कोई नहीं पूछेगा. After few years, nobody is going to ask about it. You are not very important person. So, second ARC, first ARC, right? Let's see. Justice Douglas Committee and Nolan Committee. Now see here, obviously comes the importance of information also. Information is equally important, see? Or Santhanam Committee. (1964). Right? These are all somewhere 98, 2008. Then in 1949 itself, there was a committee, Gopal Swan. (51). So if all these committees were formed and numerous other committees were formed, right? But they are very dominant ones. Fine. Or you can add one more. So, all these committees, internationally, nationally, right, or just after independence, 40 years after independence, after liberalization, before liberalization, most of these committees have, right, they have talked about certain primary principles on which the civil services should be based. ठीक है. ऐसी एक फुलटन कमिटी थी, राइट, यूपी. Right, this is also somewhere 1944. Fulton Committee. ब्रिटिश मास्टरमैन कमिटी, ये भी यूपी. So Masterman Committee on Neutrality, Fulton Committee on Pay and Service Conditions, right, and likewise. So numerous committees. If you write this much, it is enough, right? एग्जामिनर जो है इतने से ही परेशान हो चुका होगा. ठीक है, तो इतना लिखना ही बहुत होता है. ठीक है, बट लिखना क्यों है? दिखाने के लिए. And important भी है, we need some frame of reference, no, in what we are saying. Thank you. So some frame of reference is needed Only then we can write something. See? So what these committees had, right, talked about was the core principles of civil services globally, not just in India. So these are some core principles and values. Fine. Now, why these core principles would have been developed? Obviously, to reduce or eliminate the ethical and moral dilemmas. So, if public servants are confronted by are confronted by public servants are confronted by conflicting or confusing choices or decisional premises or alternatives. For example, political pressure versus legal directives. Rule of boss versus rule of law. Fine. Or personal versus public interest. Or duty versus right. That's a moral complexity. Duty versus right. What is duty? Performance of your legal professional work is your duty. Fine. What is right is what is ethically and morally correct. So, what is duty may not always be right. Army, police, spies, intelligence agents, fine, and likewise even terrorists. So, somewhere, what is duty may not be compatible with what is right. Understand? It may also be conflict. What is acceptable versus what is right. So if you want to construct a dam and you need to evacuate people, so that, right, disasters like floods or those areas where never electricity has reached, they might get electricity, fine, or navigation system can be developed, inland navigation, some means of transport or for irrigation purposes. So what are you doing? You're doing something right, but then it is not acceptable. So sometimes duty is right, but not socially acceptable, right? Sometimes there are political necessities, but not necessarily ethical. Fine, Jesse? Something that is needed politically, kya hai? It's fine. Defense expenditure. Bioterrorism. Or don't say bioterrorism, but bio-warfare use kar lo. ये सब contentious issues हैं, controversial है ना, fine, but there is need, politically there is a need for all this, right? But they may not be ethical. So we, though it is correct that we cannot live in the world of idealisms. We don't live in the world of idealisms, whether international relations ho, yeah, national issues ho. We are not living in the world of idealisms. So what do we want? So what is it called? So वैसे realism जो है administration में भी होता है. When we talk about Weberian principles of neutrality, apolitical orientation, of strict separation of personal from official, right? These are what? These are administrative idealisms. They are not practically possible, right? So obviously one is neutral for others, but not for others, or one not for other. It is possible. So we have to make a choice between idealism and realism, right? Whether it is international relation or national issues or policy making, policy implementation, we cannot always satisfy everyone. We cannot make everyone happy, right? So that's a problem. So what should we do? Pragmatic ethics, इसको आप use कर सकते हो. Moral relativism, right? Moral pluralism. Or ethical pluralism. But in spite of this reality, we need to ensure that there are certain core principles which should not be deviated. But the reality is this: you cannot write things which seem illogical. That a public servant must be influenced only by honesty and not by self-interest. That is illogical. No person ethics will ever write this answer. Because there will always be bargain. तभी तो values हैं. Bargain in amongst the values, right? So whether we say idealism or we use the word constrained idealism. So constrained idealism is something which is subject to the circumstances, subject to the context. So see, to deal with various kinds of dilemmas, to deal with the complex morality that emerges when civil servants will make choices, or even when they execute the law as such, as given by the constitution or the system, right? Then also they will face dilemma of moral choices. And that is where these principles help in somewhere course correction for the civil servants. That if I have deviated, I can correct it. So deviation is not totally unethical, right? Deviation is something guided by realism. And then you come back based on idealism. That okay, fine. How much deviation is acceptable by the moral or ethical principles? Fine. So now see, based on that, some values or principles have been defined. So पहले सबसे important है भाई public services क्या है? What is a public service? Does it constitute a sense of service? Fine. So is it a public service or it's a public office? Fine. So public servant versus public officer. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है भाई, ये सर्विस है या ऑफिस है या एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है. See, procedure, yes, only law, only technical, right? Sensitivity. Applying laws with a sense of commitment and moral obligation to the society. Following various codes, right? Of ethical premises, ethical frameworks, so that code of conducts can be implemented properly. There should not be a conflict between code of conduct and code of ethics. That is what we want to serve, right? So concept of public service comes with the idea कि भाई service है. Right? Now Sardar Patel had visualized these services, right, at a very high pedestal. He believed that there is nothing doubtful their integrity is impeccable. Ethically promoted, professionally promoted the transition There's nothing doubtful about these services. When Nehru raised the question, right, to people like Nehru or Sapru and others who raised the doubt regarding the civil services. So why should we carry forward these services? So we can use his statement that he said there's nothing doubtful about these services. Their integrity is impeccable, and they have ethically promoted the transition of India from colonial to democratic polity. So he said, how can I distrust these services? So proverbial steel frame used by him, though it was not used by him. It was by Lloyd George, the Prime Minister of Britain. So Lloyd George used even Curzon, Lloyd George, Philip Mason, right? Mountbatten, they all agreed to one thing, that whatever we have done may be forgotten, but not the civil services, not the position of collector in this country. Right? तो फिलिप वुडरूफ की बुक है द मेन हु रूल्ड इंडिया, and he has described in detail how the civil services emerged from a company-based system to a strong or most developed political professional system in the world. Right? So concept of service जो है वो civil services का aspect है, right? So this is the problem, that have we made a transformation towards service, right, from the office? Have we made the transformation towards service from administration, right? Has the officer converted to servant or not? Now that is the conflict, and that is the need of defining civil services values or the framework in which they are going to work. Okay. So basic premises क्या है भाई? Let's say if I use the word basic values. So सबसे basic premise जो है Weberian है. Weberian framework or benchmark. That is the basic premise. So you know what are the Weberian premises? क्या भाई लिखूं वैसे तो neutrality, apolitical nature, fine, anonymity, impersonality, then traditional values थे, traditional Weberian values, right? अब इसको हम post Weberian values बोल सकते हैं. Post Weberian values क्या है? Committed bureaucracy, committed civil services, committed civil services, activism, populism, then advocacy, fine. Now, so committed civil services, activism, populism, advocacy, management, entrepreneurial civil services. अब ये बहुत सारी values change हो गई. So the primary framework to understand what are the civil services values is Weberian only. And today also, the Weberian values are dominant. We do not attribute any other value to civil services except Weberian. But in that, what do we do now? We try to modify it. So see. Now contemporary debates जो हैं about public service ethics. अब ये क्या बोलते हैं सी? Now these contemporary debates about public service ethics, now they bring debates about what? Debates about accountability, right? Versus efficiency. Accountability versus ethics. Ethics versus efficiency. ठीक है, इसको आप ये भी लिख सकते हो, लीगलिज्म versus citizen centricism, right? Legalism versus moralism. Fine. Now, why this new debates have emerged now? Okay, for example, social service or welfare versus corporatism. Now we are corporatizing everything, right? So what is the debate? If we are going for corporatism, right, we are going for, now we want more liberalization What does this mean now? More liberalization, less globalization.
Basically creating the idea of monarchy or kind of oligarchy that some are able to control the market.
Internal free market. Promoting competition within, but not allowing the outsiders to compete. Okay? So it is basically privatization without globalization. So when we listen to the ideas like we have local procurement, that you are privatizing, no problem. Right? Local procurement, right? Let's say Haryana or even Bihar or many southern states demanding for reservation in private sector. Fine. Or for example, Rahul Gandhi demanding reservation in lateral entry. So global, promoting free trade but restricting monopolization, Puja, not, but yes, you can say monopolization, eh? But chronic capitalism. Uh, we are reducing, we are reducing the multinational corporations. Something like that, because they end up being like that. But what we are doing, we are promoting reducing the state's role internally, but not allowing the entry of outsiders into various sectors. So see, it's a fair policy towards our private sector within this country, native private players, right? But not for global private players. China ऐसे ही करता है, ठीक है? चाइना रिवर्स करता है पहले, फिर उल्टा कर देता है उसका. So China first allows investments. China allows capital investment, right? And then tightens the norms. Fine. See. Yes, from crony capitalism basically, right? Corporatism means obviously we cannot restrict the flow of money, technology, human resource and many other things, right? But we want to restrict it. जैसे जो debate है कि भाई local procurement हो, local लोगों का involvement हो, workforce should be recruited from the local areas. Yes. अब local workforce problem है, unskilled है, how to do it? Now this is the task of the government. Skill them. See. So today what is happening, right? We are into what we call as the, हम कहाँ पे हैं इस समय? We are into the melting pot. We are a melting pot of ethical and moral values. What is a melting pot? Correct, diversity, but
Convergence of ethics and moral respect.
preserving and evolving at the same time. Trying to maintain the continuity and the change at the same time. That's the idea. So melting pot means what? Diverse cultures, diverse value system, diverse changes happening at the same time, and at the same time we need to hold on to some core values. तो एक साथ सब हो रहा है, ठीक है? तो हम इसको क्या बोल सकते हैं भाई? ये एक तरह का what does it create? It creates what? The moral anarchy है भाई. You can use the word moral pluralism also. Multiple value system guiding the institutions, right? There are a lot of conflicting moral values which have to be taken together. Yes, fusion, correct? Melting pot, fusion type. So there are various values, even counter values which we have to take together, right? For example, बता दो अब public services को कैसे deal करना पड़ेगा, कैसे बताओ? For example,
For example, some people are not having the documents for these services. And
डी अरे एग्जाम्पल बताओ.
जैसे किसी को मेरे को जैसे फुटेज मेडिकल का डॉक्यूमेंट्स में there is conduct of service also are
Okay, चलो ये simple choice हो गया. I'm talking about a bigger scale. How the conflicts are emerging by Tushar, Pooja.
The policy may be in a way that it may hurt some religious.
Tell me, Harchit, tell me some one policy, government policies, right, which seem to be contradictory to each other.
So discrimination might lead to inclusive.
Might lead to digital divide. Okay,
First is a
fine. Or you can say.
environment policy related technology.
ठीक है बिल्कुल. Government's push for digitization, right, of payments. Right? So, how this push has come? But promoting digital payments, how this push has come? Through the UPI. India is one of the first countries which has successfully launched this UPI, right? Unified Payment Interface, right? Seamless interaction. This has given rise to what? And this has led to, right, more than 4,000 crore of scams annually since 2019 now. In some years it was 8,000, 9,000 crores, COVID ke time pe. See, what becomes important now? Now they have a cyber law, they have an IT act, they have a cyber police, which is not developed at all. If you see in the police stations, the cyber department is given a very corner position somewhere. No skilled manpower. Police कहाँ cyber training कराती है इतनी? कहाँ कराती है? Right? Don't you think they should create another special cadre for IPS, cyber security, smart policing? अलग होना चाहिए ना cadre. क्यों? उनको पहले से वही training दो. Why? Because it is not a regular law and order problem. It's not a regular policing problem. Or at least middle level state civil services, PPS level, ACP level, right? They should start focusing on developing a parallel hierarchy within the system of nurturing such experts. तो ये generally specialist dichotomy भी खत्म हो जाएगी. Fine, that's it. So now see, how do we overcome this? No, I'm not saying give me the answer. I'm simply asking how to overcome this now. If we push this, this is going to happen. So everything that we are going to do today, right? Why? Because we are so vulnerable. It is so open. Boundaries are so porous, right? That we cannot control things. As we shift our burden towards private sector, as we go for more liberalization, then government will have to somewhere compromise with this. अब इसमें बहुत सारे गरीबों का पैसा भी लॉस हो रहा है. Fine. Recently there was a news how 7 crores were taken from this one very famous textile owner of the textile company, Vardhman. It was a big group, right? Oswal, I think. So, see, so they have taken 7 crores from him, right? On the pretext of ED and CBI and money laundering and all that. See, how come? So you can imagine how sophisticated these scams are. Try to understand what I'm saying. These are not usual thief, or they are not normal people who are stealing things, right? They are the people who are highly sophisticated. A strong workforce. Up digital skills, digital technology, digital knowledge is necessary, right? But the same knowledge is used by the same extraordinary skilled people, right? For something immoral, something unethical. And these crimes have not been defined properly also. BNS has tried to incorporate now the cyber crimes, right, as an important area or criminal offense. But then it is also using digital technology. It has promoted the use of digital technologies. Evidence, electronic evidence को उसने specifically accept किया, right? So let us say if you're trying to do this, how will you overcome this? The more you do this, the more vulnerable you'll be. Fine. Then, if you are talking about private investments, see, if you're talking about private investments, right? These private investments will happen only where? Profitable areas. ठीक है? So private investments profitable areas में होंगे. So कौन से areas which are socially sensitive, which are actually needed, right? These areas the investments will decline. So either government starts investing here and starts withdrawing from the areas where private sector is investing, right? Both private sector and the government sector cannot invest in the same area. That seems illogical. But if they don't do it, then consumers will become vulnerable, right? So हमें एक बहुत strong regulatory governance चाहिए. See how civil services nature is changing. Now we need a strong regulatory governance, right? For example, correct, Jyoti, right? Yes, government schemes encouraging use of public health services despite their poor quality, right? Poor quality plus medicines are not verifiable, right? The potency of the medicines are doubtful. Yes, so we had one student, right? His father is the president's CMO. He got a lot of medicines for me one day. Fine, but I'm not using that. He got it from the same scheme, the Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Aushadhi Yojana, वही medicines. But see, he says that okay, no, they are useful, people use them. Fine, but still we are conscious about it. Perception, public ka वही. So if you are promoting, yes, certain kinds of or most of the developmental schemes, right, through the government institutions, and these government institutions do not have quality, right, this will also create a big consequence. Dilemma कि infra नहीं है लेकिन social development करना है. So if you don't have infra but you have to do social development, how are you going to do it now? How will you do it? Well, correct, but how will you do? Till that time, what will people do? Katora leke they will roam around. कि फीवर कैसे ठीक करे भाई, डॉक्टर जो है अभी ट्रेनिंग में गया हुआ है. See, we are strengthening regulatory governance. We cannot improve the infrastructure today itself. So what are we doing? First, we are trying to control the institutions which are involved, right? And time to time, we are trying to reform them. So whether it is RBI or SEBI or Lokpal or Ombudsman, banking ombudsman, right? Or for that matter, health ombudsman, and likewise many states have constituted health ombudsman also. So when जब हम ये करेंगे तो धीरे 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 धीरे, right? This dilemma, this problem of civil services versus administration, service versus office, servant versus officer, ये थोड़ा कम होगा, reduce होगा. Obviously you can, definitely that legalizing things like this will be good, right? अब इसमें भी प्रॉब्लम है रेगुलेटरी गवर्नेंस में. You see what happened with SEBI. RBI is influenced by political pressure, right? Government policies. Then this Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, totally misused by the government. 2G scam पूरा उसका consequence है. एंड लाइकवाइज बहुत सारी ऐसी बॉडीज हैं. रेलवे बोर्ड बोलता है वी आर नॉट फ्री फ्रॉम द रेलवे मिनिस्ट्री. Fine. So even if the private sectors will want to invest, they will want to have an independent regulatory systems and not the ones which are dominated by the government. Many committees, right? अभी जो 2018 में financial reforms committee या regulatory commission reforms उन्होंने our Nirmala Tai has proposed, right? So that reform may not have taken off, right? But see, they have tried to bring changes, right? Nayak committee थी, दामोदरन committee थी, बहुत सारी committees हैं. PSU reforms के लिए आए कि भाई how we can bring the PSUs into the greater, autonomy and lack of pressures and pulls from various agencies. So it is fact कि अगर PSU का employee या PSU का जो management है, fine, they are subject to the control by CVC under anti-corruption law. So will they not be scared of government? Will be scared of government. If they come under the Whistleblowers Protection Act, will they not be scared of government? They will be scared of government. Why? So either declare them as private or declare them as public. Don't make fun of them. Okay, तो joint sector public और private का बनेगा, PSU और private sector का बनेगा, right? वो कैसे regulate होगा? CAG उसको audit नहीं कर सकता. CAG वो part audit कर सकता है जहाँ public sector involved है, right? And one auditing will be done by the third party. What kind of audit is that? Where will you draw the line? कि यहाँ पे public खत्म हो गया, private आ गया. So there are a lot of issues which are emerging now, right? And these issues are creating what? The dilemma of choices, right? So many times things which seem to be legal are immoral. Things which seem to be moral are illegal. And sometimes we do not have any understanding regarding what value to be chosen for what action. So in that confusion, right, or to overcome that confusion, the various committees have tried to define कि भाई at least there must be some parameter, right? Already there are laws. So क्या laws हैं? For example, तो public service को service बनाना, public servant को committed बनाने के लिए, right? सबसे important क्या है? Code of conduct. Code of conduct. All India Civil Services Code of Conduct 54, 55, 63, 78 and likewise. Railway Service Officers Code of Conduct, right? State Civil Services Officers Code of Conduct. So there are Code of Conduct. Central Civil Services CCS Rules 2013. So there are, right, various laws which have been made, right? These are sectoral also and these are general laws. So जब हम बोलते हैं central civil services, general application, right? But when we add into that all India civil services conduct rules, right? They distinguish the general civil servants from the all India civil servants. Fine. These generally conduct rules, right, apply to everyone, but they draw a classification between whom? Generally, classification between officers and staff. So most of the officers के ऊपर ये conduct rules apply होते हैं, staff के ऊपर departmental rules apply. This is also very interesting. Why it is interesting? Because these people who are considered to be staff, basically group C or D, or generally group D, right? They are not subject to the ethical principles, yes. Because it is believed that they do not have that much of power, they do not have that much of influence, but this is not true. So generally, right, if you say group C or group D are exempted, and generally they are not subject to these codes of conduct or desired ethical conduct, even though they should be. But for them, there are departmental rules right? Which more or less can be manipulated by them. So what is necessary, right? Plus there are a lot of sectoral laws. रेलवेज का अलग है, डिफेंस ऑफिसर्स का थोड़ा अलग है, राइट? देन जो हु आर वर्किंग इन फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री उनके लिए थोड़े अलग रूल्स अप्लाई होते हैं, तो उनके अपने रूल्स भी हैं, डिपार्टमेंटल रूल्स या मिनिस्ट्रियल रूल्स हैं, राइट? एंड देयर आर जनरल रूल्स आल्सो. सो बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम क्या है? दैट देयर आर मल्टीप्लिसिटी. क्लैरिटी आ जाए लॉ में तो फिर प्रिंसिपल डिफाइन करना भी इजी हो जाएगा, नहीं? तो मल्टीप्लिसिटी ऑफ लॉस. द सेम सिविल सर्वेंट इज सब्जेक्टेड टू मल्टीप्लिसिटी ऑफ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस. फाइन? नहीं? जैसे
फॉर एग्जाम्पल डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर है, तो अगर उसको पंचायत का मिल गया कि तो पंचायत के अलग
नहीं, पंचायत के वो स्टेट लॉ में ही आएगा. अच्छा, स्टेट लॉ, नो? फाइन.
I'm misinterpreting, but there is something he has to compare with state government also. City they are
That's
also stated.
state government.
And also for the district
If he's playing a particular role, right, then he'll be governed by that also. Yes. Panchayati Raj Act, state law ही हो गया. हाँ, then when he's performing the function of a magistrate, set of guidelines. Performing as revenue collector, set of guidelines. Performing as deputy commissioner, set of guidelines. So let's say an IS, अब ऐसे ही, right? Any civil servant, so any civil servant anywhere, right? It will be impacted by departmental rules. Fine. Then it will be impacted by the position. The rules which are governing the position in which he is as of now. Fine. For example, अब CBI का जो हेड है, उसके ऊपर IPS के तो रूल्स हैं, राइट? मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम के रेगुलेशंस हैं, और उसके ऊपर क्या है, जो CBI के अपने लॉज हैं या जो स्पेशल पुलिस एस्टैब्लिशमेंट लॉज हैं, वो भी एप्लीकेबल है. फाइन. CRPC एप्लीकेबल है, IPC या BNS एप्लीकेबल है. चलो नाउ टुडे पुलिस एक्ट एप्लीकेबल नहीं. So one person, right, being governed by multiple laws, right, and likewise. See, so multiplicity of laws, this somewhere dilutes the code of conduct. Or you can say dilutes the effectiveness of code of conduct. Otherwise, it would have been more easy and simple to enforce accountability, right? This is something very good, but it is not able to enforce accountability straightforward. Fine. So, क्या करना चाहिए? What should we have? Now there is a proposal, or there has been a proposal, second ARC. Civil Services Law. Fine. Then Civil Services Board. This has been done. Fine. 1213, since 1213, right? Most of these states and central bodies or central organizations have created this civil service, or union government has created civil services board. States have created civil services board. That was basically for what? For the state civil servants as well as all India civil servants, right? How are they going to be managed, right, in terms of their service conditions? So how their service conditions will be protected, and how a fair process of or transparent process of promotion, right, transfer, salary, pension, and all those things will be treated, right? That is the idea. If civil services boards are created, then obviously there will be less burden on the organizations like CAT and SAT. अब ये भी है, this is obviously to preserve the autonomy of the civil servants. Central Administrative Tribunal and State Administrative Tribunal, Article 323A. Right? And 323B is tribunals for any other purpose. So these are the tribunals created for the service conditions. And Civil Services Board is basically for the transfers, promotions, appointments, right, or any grievances related to them. So Civil Services Board, which has been established in many states now, it depoliticizes the transfers and promotions of civil servants, right? And generally they're headed by Chief Secretary, or you can say at the union level it is the Cabinet Secretary who is heading the Civil Services Board, right? But the logic is again that undue political influences will always be there. They cannot be completely avoided. For example, now it is rule, it is the law, or it is the constitutional provision under Article 300 that UPSC, किस आर्टिकल में यूपीएससी है? 312 is All India Civil Services, right? You can create All India Civil Services. 315. So see, and thereafter you'll see various provisions related to UPSC, yeah, Joint Public Service Commission or State Public Service Commission, right? इसमें क्या है? Uniqueness है कि भाई they have to be consulted. UPSC needs to be consulted when dealing with All India Civil Services Officer, and State Public Service Commission need to be consulted when dealing with state civil servants, who the higher civil servants. So whenever promotions will be made, right, whenever there are any grievances related to who should be appointed to which position, or for that matter even the normal, you can say, appointment to the of civil servants to the various posts, the something which may be considered as promotion, something which may be considered as upgradation, right, or something which makes things controversial, there the consultation of UPSC is mandatory. So government needs to consult the UPSC, right? Obviously this process may be done, but how far it is effective, because most of the appointments of the chairman of the UPSC is done by the government. The recent chairman who resigned, you can make out, right? The moment he went away, right, the nature of paper has become more simpler. Not simpler, but you can say less anarchy. Though he was appointed in 2018 or 19. No, not 19 also, 21 I think. He was member of UPSC before that, 2017 to 19 or 20 he was member. Then he was appointed as chairman, right? But he was not academically, okay, he was qualified, let's say, but he was not intellectually qualified to be the head of that position. And that is how it created a lot of anarchy in the system. So one person comes and damages the entire system. That is why there is need for something called civil services law. What will civil services law do? Right? It will first homogenize. जो principles हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, वो क्या करेगा? It will standardize the code of conduct for the civil service. civil services. Fine. It will reduce the conflict between generalist and specialist. Now there will not be a differential treatment. IAS treated differently from IPS, or All India Services Officers treated differently from Central Civil Services Officers, right? Or for that matter, certain positions have different kinds of protections and privileges compared to others. So people coming from different services were feeling disparity within the government system, right? This can be eliminated. Fine. Then it will create clarity regarding service conditions. So your transfer, posting, punishment, complaints, right? All those things can be dealt by a uniform standard or uniform principles, right? There would not be a discrimination amongst civil services. Also, when things will be defined properly, there would be no politicization. Because the law would be very clear. What is the ground for punishment? What is the ground for suspension? Right? Was there any evidence or basis for this particular decision of the government or not? See, everything will be clearly defined. So, political interference was coming in. When something will be made a law, right, it will become statutory first of all. Fine. Secondly, there will be a body which will deal with it, like Civil Services Board or any National Civil Services Commission you can create. It will deal with that. Then everything will be subject to judicial review. Now, nothing will be given in verbal, no directions can be given orally, right? Everything has to be documented. So, if code of conduct is also improved, lot of things can improve, right? So, and regular reforms, that is also fact. So, these of code of conduct must be upgraded regularly. They cannot be static in nature. So laws related to training, laws related to appointment, transfer, promotion, posting, punishment and like this. Fine. अभी भी punishments में बहुत सारे gray areas हैं. For example, जो civil servants को जो punishments मिलते हैं, right? 198. But punishments मिलते हैं, what kind of punishments? See? Suspension. Then, or let's, you can write it this way. Fine. So punishments कैसी हैं भाई? You can reprimand. The superior can reprimand. Fine. He can be angry at the subordinate. He can reflect his anger on the subordinate. Right? He can ask him to do certain things. He can force him to do certain things. And like, but that will come later. See, reprimand कर सकते हैं. और क्या कर सकते हैं? उससे भी थोड़ा और कुछ पेनाल्टीज इंपोज कर देते हैं. Economic penalties. Fine, for simple fines, Vardo. Right? Something like this. Then, correct? You can use issue office.
Transfer to a specific area.
Well, that is again a bigger punishment, right? Office memo issue kar do. Show cause. Right? First notice, you just have to explain. When it comes again, then you have to respond legally. So if there are regular show cause notices given, right, then becomes a legal issue. Otherwise, it is a general departmental direction that why something has happened, why don't we initiate inquiry against you? Show cause, office move. ठीक है. Then आप उसको शो कॉज भेज दिया, फिर क्या कर सकते हैं? आप उसको समन कर सकते हो. किस चीज के लिए? इंक्वायरी के लिए. If the inquiry starts, right, which we can use the word departmental inquiry starts, then you can suspend if you find the charges credible. Now there is also a problem. Who finds the charges credible? Superior. वहां भी मैनिपुलेशन है, ठीक है. So you can suspend him, right? Or you can make him inactive from. So not necessarily suspend him, but you can make him inactive from duty for some time. Fine. Then you can impose something called major penalties. If somebody is involved and there is an inquiry which is going on, or inquiry has been conducted at department level, then if there are frauds, embezzlement, scam, corruption has been found, then what you can do, the government or the department can impose major penalty in the form of recovery, right? Termination of pension. So one very senior, the highest forest officer in Uttarakhand, one of them, he is undergoing this major penalty, and a recovery is being made from his pension now after his retirement. 10 years after retirement, now the government, because he was found in one of the cases. So but that's what is wrong with that. He has earned crores and crores. So government will recover the damage which has been done. That's correct. Civil liability hai, criminal liability hai, dono hai. So you have to pay for the damages and you have to undergo the imprisonment, both. Right? So termination of pension हो सकता है, recovery हो सकता है, right? Then you can be removed, you can be dismissed, right? You cannot be terminated at will, but you can be given adequate time and you can be terminated. Fine. Then obviously आपके खिलाफ judicial inquiries भी create कर सकते हैं. That means even your department itself can file a case against you in the court. So judicial proceedings can also be initiated against you, right? Both departmental and judicial both. Because department has limited loss of seniority, correct Jyoti? Yes. Department has a limited influence. It can impose maybe some minor penalties. So it will go for filing the case. Okay. Correct. और क्या हो सकता है? Right. Demotion. Right. Reduction in salary. So they can face severe consequences to mild consequences to just a warning. They can be left. If, right, now that is streamlined. So what will happen now? They will become more conscious, they will become more responsible, there will be clarity as to what is the ground for punishment, why punishment has been given, and people will already know why and when the punishment would be given. So code of conduct में बहुत सारे reforms चाहिए, civil service law चाहिए, law बनेगा, clarity होगी. Fine. Then institutional mechanism. If you have to convert the officer to a servant, You need institutional reforms also. The reforms or the institutions which are related to civil services. क्या institutional reforms है? For example, first ARC, second ARC, right? First and second ARC. They have talked about, right, improving, let's keep it A, minister, civil servant relations. पहला institutional reform कहाँ चाहिए? At the level of ministry and department. So minister civil servant relationship, how should it be? So Nehru and Patel were quite famous for this. That they have always, like Patel gave a very famous statement, that first thing I tell my secretary is to give me an impartial advice. I don't want my secretary to be my subordinate. I want my secretary to be my co-equal. But those were the leaders who had some sense of integrity. Fine? Even though there were a lot of stories about Nehru also, that in certain areas he was very stubborn and he was very rigid, especially related to foreign relations. He never listened to his foreign secretary. So he dominated the foreign, or what can say, international affairs office, as taking decisions on his own or through his kitchen cabinet. तो सेक्रेटरी की पोजीशन वहाँ अंडरमाइन थी, राइट? सो कुछ मिनिस्ट्रीज, फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री पे बहुत कंट्रोल था. So most of the prime ministers have a lot of control over finance ministry, and that is why they appoint such people. At least in the Congress, they were not appointing such people. But Congress में भी culture of loyalty था already. Otherwise, Nirmala Sitharaman is not supposed to be there as finance minister, who cannot answer even a single financial question. Right? At least she should sit with the secretary who can answer. But let's say, we have talked about legislative assembly and all, don't worry. First important kya hai? Direct. Minister civil servant relation. What type of relationship is needed? Same things. Fine. Now most of the decisions are taken at the secretary level. So it is said that there should be joint most of the secretaries, right, make decisions and they sign the papers, right? Ultimately, the accountability goes to them. They sign the papers in the name of Government of India or under the President of India. And so ministers are, in that sense, obviously they are not free from accountability, right? But at least in terms of documentation, they can shift the burden to bureaucracy. Fine. So, so this can what? This can shifting the burden or so free, fair, impartial relation होना चाहिए. जॉइंट सिग्नेचर्स होने चाहिए, राइट? देन that means there should not be more than 3 levels below the minister where the file should be approved. It should not go to the multiple levels. So, correct, Puja, conflict resolutions, right? So, below the ministers, only 3 levels of approval and scrutiny. Fine. Oath of secrecy, which article? That means you have not studied. Fine. Or you want any teacher to teach you all the articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, clause 2, 4, clause 3, 4, clause 5. Fine. And so, 6 years of preparation for civil services. You see the trend? Most of the students scoring or claiming to score very high in prelims are not qualifying mains. Why? Because they have oriented their entire study and preparation into some keywords and information. So they are able to qualify prelims. But now that keywords and information and pointer is not allowing them to write answer. एक साल पहले, 2 साल पहले, see, there was a student, right? There a lot of students come. So one of them said, sir, test में sir आपने 15 questions दिए, sir 30-20 आता है. मैंने कहा तुम्हें पता आएगा ऐसा? नहीं सर पिछली बार आया था. मैंने कहा तू 25 भी आ सकता है, right? See, I'm making tests from last 3-4 years on the same format. 20-15-15, 20-20-10, right? And I said, this is how it is going to evolve. But see the logic, see? दिमाग देखो. 25 और 30 में क्या लिख दोगे extraordinary difference? If UPSC has to complicate it, what it will do? It will give you, right, a big question in 10 marks and now tell you, okay, right. If you feel that, okay, I cannot complete this answer without writing 200 words, but UPSC is saying write in 120 words only. We don't want 200 words. So what will you do? See, that is why if you are futuristic, if you have the ability to anticipate or intuition to understand things, when I will appear, it will be almost 2 years the time since I have started preparing. तो obviously मैं तुम्हें आज क्या बताऊंगा जो 2 साल बाद दिखाई देगा. ये हमारी पढ़ाई कैसी होनी चाहिए जो 2 साल बाद विजिबल होनी चाहिए. ये नहीं कि आज पेपर में आ रहा है तो अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा, खुश हो गए, हमने तो आता है. लेकिन when you will give the paper, that will be almost after 2 or 1.5 years, right? उस समय भी वो ट्रेंड होगा कि नहीं होगा? See, that is why we study that way. That if UPSC somewhere desires tomorrow कि I have to scale up the paper, then what will happen? If the paper is scaled down, everybody is happy. सब आ गया. See, लेकिन यही अगर पेपर कल स्केल अप हो जाता है, राइट, तो तुम्हारे लिए तो वो एग्जाम फ्यूचरिस्टिक है ना, आज का थोड़ा ना। हाउ कैन यू असेस योर नॉलेज ओनली फ्रॉम द एग्जाम दैट हैज कम टुडे? You have to assess your knowledge that the exam that has come today, right? It is somewhere here and I'm somewhere here. That means what? I have a bigger range. That is what the range you have to need. You need to have. कि भाई आज ऐसा है, फिर 25 में ऐसा हो सकता है, 26 में ऐसा हो सकता है, मुझे तो अभी 5 साल और देना है. तो क्या, do I have the range in which these exams will fit? Yes, if you have the range, good. Right? And that range develops how? That is when you have studied something in elaborate manner, you have discussed it, you have understood how every undercurrent is met. ठीक है, 2, 4, 10, 20, 50% फैक्ट्स जो है, 20% फैक्ट्स वो आप कहीं से भी पढ़ सकते हो, वो ऐड कर सकते हो कहीं से भी. दैट्स कीप fine. But if you don't have the idea or the understanding of the topic itself, then you keep adding fact. How does it matter? Which fact is relevant for the UPSC examiner? You don't know. But at least we are very sure ना कि logic, understanding, rationality, concept, उसको वो deny नहीं कर सकता. Information को तो कर सकता है कि भाई ठीक है, तुमने ये क्यों लिखा है? If you keep writing union budget, Pooja, Article 99 for what? Article 99 is for what? Article 99? Article 75, Clause 4, generally we derive the oath to the ministers, right? Article 99 is for oath and affirmation, right? But the basis of secrecy is what? 75(4). So why they are administered the oath of secrecy? You first answer me the logically, right? Then I'll tell you very interesting. I'll not take the name. But एक reel बना है ना एक teacher का, बड़ी popular teacher है वो. So somehow I was, because when I keep reading certain content तो अपने आप automatically कुछ आ जाता है. So I was reading the analysis of M.V. Piley. You know who's M.V. Piley? You've not heard his name. One of the most influential, right, commentaries on Constitution. M.V. Piley Chief Justice रह चुके हैं, Justice रह चुके हैं, sorry. उनका compilations है ना, commentaries के, right, judgments के. So I was reading M.V. Piley's some analysis. So automatically वो आ गया, right? So a logic was given by the teacher for oath of secrecy, like that was not even 9th class student will accept that logic. And you can just search and read or see that like read. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm simply saying how such mediocre standards exist, right? So either UPSC का standard बहुत mediocre है, right? कि लोग ऐसा पढ़ के भी लिख पा रहे हैं और उनको कुछ numbers मिल जा रहे हैं, चलो इसलिए GS में number नहीं आते, I know. So वो तो that is a combination people make somehow, okay, fine. But see, you read, you listen to that reel and analysis. It's heartbreaking. Somebody, she might be 10 years senior to me in age at least, right? But with such experience, vast knowledge, right? But technically that is not knowledge. That means what? What they have done? They have just customized the content, right? To suit or make the students feel, more or less comfortable, and they are just, converting it into a format. The format seems more or less good in the UPSC, even if it is mediocre, but एक ही वही format हर जगह है, तो examiner choose कर लेता कि भाई that's the bad versus the worst, which one to choose, right? So let's have the option of choosing the bad one. So if students are working properly, if you are using your brain, you are relaxed while you are studying, you are going and understanding, visualizing the lecture again. Okay, fine, क्या किया हमने, right? What was the logic? What was the logic? You just write it. You go back, take a short piece of paper or take this notebook itself, give a small space, and then write the keywords or the ideas which we have visualized. Do it every day, you see. So after 10 days, right? But the problem is, meanwhile, you will get some other handout somewhere. You will get some booklet in the market, and it's, "अरे, इसको कर लेता हूँ, इससे हो जाएगा." Who is designing all that? A person like you. Why? Because when he's designing it, when he's making it, he's totally into that, and that is why he's able to make it. If somebody goes on to acquiring the information and collecting information and making a booklet, वो अच्छी बनी जाएगी, वो सिर्फ information acquire कर रहा है, right? But क्या आपको सिर्फ उसकी जरूरत है? नहीं है. But when you will acquire, you will know कि भाई, this is the logic, this is the concept I have studied, right? Now which information should I use? So why do we have oath of secrecy?
To avoid profit seeking from any conflict of interest if they are
See, don't say profit seeking. There could be various consequences. Fine. Oath of secrecy का meaning क्या है? Like Secretary RC saying oath of transparency करो. Don't make it oath of secrecy, make it oath of transparency. जल्दी बताओ भैया. What is the meaning of oath of secrecy?
to maintain confidentiality of all the
Correct. Now that word. Let's stick to the idea. Secrecy is to maintain confidentiality. Of what?
all the rulings to maintain.
The confidentiality of what? अरे दो चीजें हो सकती. Correct. Information.
Communication.
Right? Information. Decisions. Fine. Or process. What decisions were taken? Right? What specific facts were, elaborated in this decision, or what facts have been more or less defined, right, or expressed here, and how this decision was made. Fine. Ye ho gaya? So confidentiality of information, decisions, process. Right? What else? What else now?
So, how they are going to impact the
internal workmate PMOs, the communication.
See, there are two. Now try to understand. Government decisions, whatever government or policy decisions the cabinet will take, or council of ministers will take, or minister and secretary will take, right? So there would be what? There would be something called consultations. These consultations would have, right, implications. What kind of implications? These consultations would have manifest implications, and it would have latent implications. Why? Now try to understand. This point was missed by that teacher. I was so shocked, right? So my respect is declining for all of them now. No, I'm not criticizing them, right? I'm basically now losing the respect for all of them. Just misusing or manipulating their platforms to create a mass of mediocre people who will more or less bang their heads here and they'll go homes. That's what will happen. Legal puja, allegiance to duty, correct to an extent, legal compliance, but try to understand ये कैसा function है? What is a policy function? Policy function कैसा function है? Sovereign function है. See, they could not use the term, they do not understand the law or constitution itself. Sovereign function. What is a policy? Sovereign function. What is the consultation being done for? A sovereign function, right? Sovereignty needs to be protected कि नहीं? किससे information बचाना है अपने लोगों से? क्या बेवकूफी की बात है? What rubbish analysis they have done to protect the information from whom? Legislature, from this, from other political parties. Do we need to do that? Don't they have the means to get it? They have the means. They have the RTI. They have legislative questionnaires. They have no confidence motion. What kind of rubbish analysis? See, kuch bhi kuda. They realize and people will accept. Oh, kuda. Batao. Yeah, illogical. It's a sovereign function. No? Any educated person, in person who has studied law or political science or public administration, you talk to him, he will say the first thing, कि ये policy है क्या? Sovereign function है. Right? Nobody has the right to encroach into this sovereign function. So when you are disclosing the policy, the consultations, the analysis, the process, right? What are you doing? You're allowing, obviously not the members of your community or society or your state, right? But a lot of outside forces, lot of, or let's say the rest of the world, right? In poking and manipulating your sovereign function. Influence, interpretation, their decisions might be changed, right? If China gets to know what is going to be the policy of India with respect to Nepal, right? Or let us say one of the ministers by chance, gives an indication to that, right? The China will have a lot of upper hand in that. Any nation will have an upper hand in that, right? So every policy that we make, a decision, it has manifest and latent. Latent kya hota hai? That one, right? On the basis of which the government protects its sovereignty. It protects its integrity. It protects its defense, security, strategic, systems which it has created, right? Also, confidentiality makes sure that this collective responsibility, right? This network of these people who are together, right? It is maintained. This balance is maintained. So it protects the sovereign function of policy making, right? It creates or somewhere establishes the collective responsibility or idea, right? Or you can say, rather than this, you can say, yes, it helps functioning of the cabinet as an organic body, right? It helps it functioning as a as an organic body or as a body, right? Together. So how their interests will be aligned? Only when they maintain a level of confidentiality amongst themselves. Only when they act as per the defined collective responsibility or collective moral and ethical framework, right? Second, ये second level है, पहला तो यही है, right? Then, what else? Like you said, simple. Conflict of interest. In any case, they have a legislative accountability, right? They cannot deny the information to the legislature. That cannot happen. Fine. So they tend to avoid conflict of interest, or someone should not derive any personal interest out of that. Corporates, media, anyone may not be able to derive personal interest out of that, right? Economic interest out of that, or some kind of interest out of that. Then, see, the biggest vital aspect we have discussed many times, right, is what? The public trust. The liability that government has. गवर्नमेंट क्या है? गवर्नमेंट क्या है आपका? एजेंट है भाई, राइट? गवर्नमेंट आपकी क्या है? ट्रस्टी है. द गवर्नमेंट इज योर ट्रस्टी. You have entrusted your resources, your sovereignty, your power to the government, right? How can it take this trust so casually? So public trust is vested in the government, right? Through what? Through a constitution, through a contract, right? So ये contract कैसे enforce होगा भाई? When they protect the information for which the power has been given to them, तब तो ये trust enforce होगा. See, so there is something called what? Liability. Sorry. Right? We have used in the RTI, there is something called what? The patron-client relationship or patient-doctor confidentiality. क्या बोलते हैं उसको? Correct. That's the idea. So fiduciary trust. So see, it has various implications. It's not as simple as saying, "Ki, this is no." So see, secrecy maintains a sense of integrity, a sense of collectiveness, a sense of public trust, a kind of sovereign function. That is the most important thing. आप क्या कर रहे हो भाई? Policy is not सब्जी आलू बेचना. तुम policy बना रहे हो. Impeccable standards of integrity are needed. The fate of the nation, the fate of the crores of people is dependent on that, right? How can you disclose it to anyone? How can you even feel like, giving away your sovereign function to someone? You cannot. So see, government protects that trust. Right? Somewhere so, secrecy binds them into a covenant, into an agreement. You understand? That is the idea. The blood of covenant is thicker than the water of womb. ये लीगल प्रिंसिपल है. तो जो चीज लीगल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं है उसकी कोई वैलिडिटी नहीं है. शब्दों के, इमोशंस के, फ्रेटर्निटी के, भाईचारे की कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. किसकी वैल्यू है? जो लिखा हुआ है. So see, that's the idea. So oath of secrecy, whether to ministers or civil servants, right? Obviously now civil servants are what? Agents now of the state. The agents have to protect the trust of their principal. The agents do not enjoy the power themselves. They have delegated power. They are not sovereign. They are protecting the sovereign trust. Now see? So उनका primary duty क्या है? To protect the sovereign. And that is why they have to take the oath of secrecy, right? They are executive, they have authority, they can directly misuse this information. They can misuse this data, this fact, right? Or the intent of the government around which the decision has been taken. So policy, right? Ideology, manifestation of whatever the government intends to do, right? The intent and will of the people, all combined into the idea of what? Public trust. और उसको protect करना. Have you understood this much? Fine. So, be happy, go home. Fine, then see you tomorrow.